Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table. I'm your host, Michael Martin, and I'm here to interview top producing real estate agents, top producing mortgage lenders, and successful business owners. I am very, very excited today to have one of my longtime friends and certainly a business partner that we do some work with, Miss Ida Terbet. She has been in the Raleigh market for quite a while. We're going to talk
39 years.
39. Okay, wonderful. That was one of my questions, so you've gotten that out of the way very early. So, as a lot of people know, I do a lot of work with your son, and through my relationship with Michael, I've certainly got to know you even better, and that's been a lot of fun. I think I may have told you this story, Ida. I was at some sort of charity event. It was downtown. I want to say at the one of the museums downtown, like North County Museum. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, there was a charity event there. I just moved to Raleigh probably a year or two before. Had just gotten in the mortgage business.
How long ago was that?
So I got in 2002. So this was somewhere around 2004, I'm guessing.
Okay, that was a while back.
Yes, and so I met you at that event. You and I actually were dancing on the floor that night.
I love
and that
dancing.
was a long time ago. So yes, you do love to dance. So I'm really excited. So let's just kind of jump in. I want to learn about the very beginning of your story. So even before real estate. So what were you doing? I know you moved here in, what year did you move to Raleigh?
April 30th of 86.
86. Okay, great.
And I started getting my real estate license in August. I waited till the kids got in school. Colleen was she was not
So
happy.
You didn't have your license until you got here?
No.
Okay, got it.
I actually had a clothing store, married Bob, inherited 4 teenagers. And out of those 4 teenagers, 2 of them came to live with us. So Colleen was just a baby when we got married.
Okay.
Then we had Michael 9 months and 5 days later. Then we inherited, which we knew we'd have joint custody, but I didn't realize they would be living with us. So all of a sudden, I have 4 teenagers. I have 2 teenagers, and I have 4 children. And Bob traveled 50% of the time flying.
Yeah, he was a pilot.
Okay. So I sold the store and needed to still work. I said, we paid 50% of our, basically his income to his former wife and the children.
Mm-hmm.
And I always worked. And so I went into direct sales, which was the best thing for real estate. I had over 300 people under me, and I was one of their absolute top salespeople, managers. And that really helped me to get into this. Yeah. Because every week, I cannot tell you how many makeup parties I did, how many recruiting. The one thing that you do to make a good income in that business is you recruit people. Yeah. And 1 out of 10 would make it. After 6 months, they kind of like real estate. Yeah. They go, this is not as easy as you make it look. Yeah. But I did tremendous in that business. But I said to my husband, I'm going to go into real estate. And I was going to get my real estate license, and I was ready to start school in California. And he called me every night when he was gone, and he goes, they're opening a hub in North Carolina. What do you think about that? And I went, honey, that's nice. He goes, no, I'm asking you, would you move to North Carolina? I took the phone, looked at it, and said, do we have an argument now? Or do we just wait? And I said, well, honey, that's nice. We'll talk about it when you get home. Because I only equated North Carolina to Mayberry. Yeah. And here we live in, Silicon Valley. Yeah. But he said, let's do this. Let's drop the kids off at your mom's, and let's just go for a few days. And honestly, I just thought we'd have a honeymoon, come here and leave and go. Mm-hmm. We put money down on the house that we lived in for 38 years. That is crazy. Fell in love with it. And
you only lived in one house the whole time you were here?
I know, it's hard to believe.
Holy moly.
That was our dream home. And remodeled, we redid things all the time. Mm-hmm. But that was where I wanted Colleen and Michael to grow up. I lived in 12 different homes in 13 years when I was growing up. So I hate all that change. Yeah. And I like stability. And it was our dream home. And I wanted the kids to know what it felt like to have the same home. And then the grandkids started coming. And you've been to many a party at our home. We had all the parties there. And it was just kind of like, that's the Terbet family. That's the Terbet home. So it was kind of hard to sell a year and a half ago, but we needed to do it.
Yeah. Well, probably the timing was certainly right with Bob.
But that's what I did. And direct sales, I cannot tell you, was really the influence of me being successful in this business.
That's wild. You know, a couple things you just mentioned that resonate with me. First is my mom was a real estate agent for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
My dad was a builder and developer and architect. He's still, in fact, I talked to him this morning, and he's got 5 different spec homes he's drawing.
Yeah.
And so, still, and he's 80. He'll be 83 next month, and he's still working as hard as he wants to. Anyway,
and that's what's so important.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
never am going to retire. I love what I do.
Yeah, he certainly must as well, because
Yeah.
he certainly doesn't have to work at this
Yeah.
point, but he loves
Yeah.
to do it. I think it keeps him busy and
Yeah.
keeps his mind sharp, right?
Exactly. That's the key.
That's right. And so, interesting enough, I moved almost every other year as a kid growing up, because my parents, that was part of how we made money, I didn't make any, they made
You
money.
build the house, and then you would leave
My
there.
dad would find the house, and then it's probably how, I think it's why my mom ended up getting a real estate license as well, because they were buying houses anyway. Might as well have her be the agent instead
Yeah.
of someone else. And that was in Alexandria, Virginia. So I think by the time I was 16, I told my mom this the other day, and she said, that's not true. I said it was 8 homes that we lived in, and she said, I think it was ended up being either five or 6 or 7. Anyway, it was a lot of homes by the time I was 16. And I still have a hard time saying still. I've bought 7 homes myself. And so
I know I'm not the typical person in real estate, because everyone says, well, all the homes out there, you didn't want. I said, we just loved our home. It was our anchor.
Yeah.
And Bob loved our home.
Yeah.
He just loved it.
Especially from him traveling, having the same place to come to, I'm
Yeah.
sure. It's like, we just got back from Nashville from this last night. Man, we had such a blast in Nashville, but holy moly, it was so nice being in our own bed last night. And just, I slept 10 times better.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So the other thing that you said that resonated with me, I probably lost it now, but we were talking about the homes that you lived in, and then I'm sure it'll pop back up if I need to. But
About me being direct sales or having
direct sales. Yes, thank you. And so, my first job ever in sales was selling Bibles and educational books door to door in Mississippi, in rural Mississippi.
What year was that?
So that would have been probably 96.
So people answered the door?
Yes, they did at that point. And again, I was in the rural areas, right? Like, we learned very quickly, that if you wanted to sell, like going into a community like where I live in now, right, Northridge or something like that.
You wouldn't answer the door.
Nobody would answer the door back then, right? Even back then. But if you're knocking on these homes and there's acreage, right? I mean, everyone answers the door. In fact, they would invite you to sit down and eat with them, right? Just extremely wonderful people.
Totally different.
Right? But I feel like that job helped prepare me for sales better than anything else.
Well, when you do that, you get rejected. You just pick up and keep going.
That's right.
And I liked it, but I got very tired, because I would, as I said, the way you make your income is the residual of when they would do something, you got a percentage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had over, I think, 300 people under me.
Wow.
And I just got so tired of it, because what I did is once a week I would train the managers, and then I would have because we belonged to a country club. So every quarter I'd have this big event, lunch, invite all of our clients. At the same time, what we're trying to do is book more parties and sell more, but most of all, recruit other people to become agents.
Okay.
And
real estate agents, or
no,
you mean
agents
for
because
that?
that's how you wanted to, like, I want to recruit you. See how easy and fun this is?
Mm-hmm.
And I was really good at it. I did it for 7 years.
Wow. And that was all in California?
In California.
Okay.
But, and when Bob and I got married, and I loved my stepkids, but there were 4 teenagers, and the former wife couldn't handle them, so we got them. And it was challenging, but it was worth it. And I'm so close to all of them, but someone had to stay home.
Yeah.
And Bob was traveling, so I said, I'll stay home. And there were some times that it was like, what have I gotten myself into? But it was worth it, because Bob was everything to me.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you sharing that. It's good to know from the California. And where specifically were you guys in California? You said Silicon Valley.
We were in San Jose, Los Gatos area.
Okay, very good. And what year? You said 85 is when you moved here?
86.
86. Okay, wow.
April of 86.
Got it. Interesting. I was just trying to think. So Michael was what, 5?
He was 6. He was in first grade.
Okay, yeah, that's well.
And he didn't care at all. We both of them went to a private Christian school, And looking back, I should have waited for summer to come. But I thought, oh, this will be good because they can meet friends in school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Colleen was 11 or 10, I can't remember. And girls are different than boys.
Mm-hmm.
Just I put him in a baseball team, easy go. Girls kind of look over at, I mean, it's just different with girls.
Especially once they're starting to get to that teenage years.
That's exactly right.
No doubt.
So I made sure I wasn't immediately going to get my license. I said, no, I'm going to wait till August when they start. So August is the day of school started. I started real estate school. And what we did is we explore, we'd go to the museums, we'd do things because I wanted to learn the area myself. But I just had to stay with them more because I wanted them to feel secure. Michael could care less. Michael was like, Mom, what's you upset about? I said, well, honey, it's kind of hard to make changes sometimes.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't understand what I was talking about. But also, we moved into a neighborhood where their best friends were there. But we were like one of the first people in the neighborhood. So we had one family that came from California, and they moved in 3 months later. Colleen and her girlfriend, Christy, have the same birthday. If they were at her house or our house, and same thing with all the kids lived in the neighborhood, never had to leave the neighborhood. So it was just what I wanted.
That's great.
It was just what I wanted.
That's great. Yeah, certainly a nice, safe area too. What is, you've been doing this, you said 39 years. When you first started, how did you know that this was going to be your calling?
I wanted to do real estate for 4 or 5 years, but I didn't know how I was going to do it because the teenagers then moved out. They got old enough. I just said, how am I going to be able to do this with young kids and teenagers that I needed to really watch? And so I was going to start. Literally, I went and got the booklets. You have to realize everything was in paper then.
Yes.
And I was filling out the paperwork to start real estate. And then that's when Bob had the idea about moving. And if you know anything about Bob, when Bob wants to do something, I always did it because normally he didn't care what we did. But moving here was something he really wanted to do. And I said, honey, you've never ever done this before where you say this is important to you. By moving here, we got here 2 years before the hub came. And Bob designed a brochure. And he put it in every crew lounge. Anytime the
Designed a real estate brochure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's right on the wall in our office. It's so elementary. I think, wow. It had on there, thinking about moving to RDU, and it was the parallel runways. And Bob he drew it out. And it had, then you tore it off and it said, thinking about buying a home, renting a home, buying land, buying a duplex. Would you like more information? And I had to tear off and I had to go to the house. I knew in the very beginning, you never had to go to the office. And I was like a little kid going to the mailbox. And the first year I was in real estate, I sold almost 60 homes just to pilots and flight attendants.
Oh my gosh.
I pick them up at the airport. And I take them home with them, eat with us. I take them back to the hotel. Normally, it took 3 visits. First one was just to learn the area. Then we'd go and just drive through neighborhoods. And I'd say, I don't want you to go in any houses right now. I just want to get a feel of what you like. I learned real quick. The one that sat in the front seat was the one that made the decision. And at those days, you always had your buyers in the car.
Yeah. And
I needed them as much as they needed me because they were all most of them were former military.
Yeah.
Or if they were civilian, I could tell you by just being with you for 5 minutes, were you a civilian pilot or were you a military pilot?
I imagine.
Military pilots always sat in the back seat and let the wife do everything. If they were civilians, they wanted to control more. And I said, oh, where did you go to school? Did you go to Florida? How do you know that? And I went, I just kind of figured it out. But if they were military, they were used to their wives and they just get out and they go, well, she was always the one that did everything. I want to let her decide. The men always wanted to be rural. They wanted to go out and the women wanted to be close to everything. So I learned real quick that, they said they wanted to buy something. I would listen to the wife and say, so what's important? Well, I want to put my daughter in Girl Scouts. I want to do this and this and this. I never took them the back way into the houses because it looks like you're out in the boondocks. When I moved here, I got lost. I can't even tell you how much. I never saw so many trees. And so we became real good friends. In 2 years, I think it was 100 families I sold. Wow. So the first 2 years, I didn't work with anybody except American Airlines.
Wow.
And it was all from that little brochure. And then after that, and then I started watching the same signs. And I go, why am I selling all these homes? I need to list. And I had joined RE/MAX at the time. So I went to every convention and sat in the front row on how to list, how to market yourself, and so in those days you only did print advertising. And I was so used to doing that when I had the clothing store, I immediately started advertising. And when I started advertising the newspaper, I would get only one listing. And I put that one listing in a half page, go, feature listing of the week. People call and say, I want to be a feature listing. How can I do it? They didn't know that was my only listing. But that's how I started.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That brings us back to like thinking about print ads, right? When I first moved here in 2003, even, I would get the newspaper every day. And certainly, was it
16,000 a month.
Saturdays would be the
Real
real estate section in there. I'd go through and study that thing every day. Of course, I'm trying to meet these real estate agents, right? And I always remember your ads being in there. You'd had a whole page, I feel like, at that point.
Yeah, I went from, seriously, listings became so easy. It's a little more challenging now getting listings because you have so many companies that are, I'm not going to mention names, but you know what I'm talking about. And I love print advertising because people, that's what they did. The challenge that you have with the internet is you can see views, but why don't they pick up the phone? Why don't they email? Yeah. They're just kind of shopping and shopping. It's a totally different market.
Well, especially the younger folks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? People that are, under 40, they almost never pick up the phone, right? They're only going to text or FaceTime, right? It's interesting to me that they will FaceTime, but they won't actually call. So that's always been, interesting. My daughter specifically, right? Like she will never pick up the phone and call a friend ever. I don't think she's ever done it. I don't mean physically making her.
Yeah.
They'll FaceTime each other and text like crazy, but they won't actually pick up the phone and call. So that's changing. We're watching that. So we have to move and,
well, but getting started was fun. But again, I was always in sales. I couldn't do anything else. And I would learn, matter of fact, I would get lost. And if I picked you up, so my sweet Bob, the night before, at that time, we had a big map that either RE/MAX or Perry and Walston did banner, and they had all the new subdivisions. And I'd circle them or whatever house I was going to. And he'd say, now, honey, you're going to go to this one first. You're going to go to this one second. You're going to go to this one third, because he would look to see how close they were. I'd pick you up at the airport with your wife, usually, and I'd say, now, Michael, I want you to learn the area. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this map, and you're going to tell me where to go. They had no idea I didn't know where I was going. So you'd say, okay, all right, well, you're going to come up, and you're going to do this. Okay, it looks like you're going to have 3 more blocks before you turn left. They go, wow, this is a great idea. And I go, well, I want you to learn the area. So that's how I did it.
You can learn it along with me. It's perfect.
But they had no idea.
They
just thought I wanted them to learn.
That is awesome. Yeah. They were basically your navigation system before we had navigation systems in the car. So that worked out fantastic. I love that trick. That is awesome. Very cool. So I was going to ask you what your first year looked like. You've already told me. You said 60 homes or something in your first year, which is just insane.
I was
by yourself, I'm assuming.
Yeah, And then I had hired my first assistant after a year. I was going crazy. I mean, crazy. And so I had joined RE/MAX. I was with HPW for a year, and great company, but they're split. They wouldn't talk to me. And I was used to RE/MAX in California, and it had just opened. I was the 9th person to join RE/MAX in the Carolinas.
Wow.
So it was Joe Hanahay and Dick Coleman. Both died very tragically, very young. And I went in, and the real estate, real estate agents and companies were saying that they were not working ethically because it wasn't traditional. And I walked in and I said, are you doing anything illegal? Because if you are, I'm not going to join this company. They go, no. Well, let me explain to you. So they showed me what I just had to pay for the rent. And I got a split that was wonderful. I said, I'm joining tomorrow. And I joined. And
is that where you started with RE/MAX?
I was HPW, Better Homes and Gardens.
Okay.
And I was Rookie of the Year for Better Homes and Gardens, but I didn't go to the award. And I started with RE/MAX, and I was with them 18 years.
Okay, wow.
But I was the 9th person. So when I say I pioneered, and from that, a lot of RE/MAX agents came.
Yeah.
And they saw me and they go, "You're not afraid?" And I went, "No, it's wonderful." But you had to be in business for yourself. And see, I didn't want anybody telling me what to do anyway. Traditional companies at that time, they had all these rules. And I got in trouble all the time because I wanted to wear sandals. In those days, you had to wear pantyhose, slacks, or a suit. What a difference. And I'd get in trouble because I'm out showing new construction, and I'd have on sandals, and I'd get called into the office. I said, "This is pure out ridiculous. It's 95 degrees out there." "Well, Ida, we have an image you have to have."
I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you so much for watching our podcast so far. If you do me a huge favor before you forget about it, to like, subscribe, and if you would, just leave a quick comment about what you think of the podcast. And if you want to share it with your friends, I'd love that too. Thanks again so much. We'll finish up right now.
I just didn't like all those rules. And now you don't even, there's no dress code anymore.
No.
But it was different then.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But no, it was, but RE/MAX was great to me. And then I joined Keller Williams, but then I came home. It was during the recession, and Keller Williams was having some challenges, and the location was going to have to move. And I said to Colleen, "Let's just go ahead and do like Linda and let's get a building and we'll start our own company." But then everybody wanted me and the team, and Don Walston said, "What do you want? I'll do whatever you want. I lost you once before." Because Don, at the time, when I left, said, "She's a pilot's wife. She won't last 18 months. So every time I would see him, I go, "It's been more than 18 months. It's been 18 years. And we're very close. I love Don.
Yes, I'm
I
sure.
love Don.
Yeah.
He's not just the owner of the company, but he's such a good friend.
You've been back there for 15 years?
We're going on our 13th year.
13 years. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
Good while. I remember it was a big deal when you left to go to Keller. And then certainly when you left Keller, it was another big deal that everybody was talking about in the marketplace. All right. So real estate is certainly full of all kinds of ups and downs, right? We're talking about the recession.
I've gone through every recession, every great market, and you just have to learn to adapt.
So I was going to ask you, what do you stay consistent? What do you do, or what's helped you stay consistent through these market changes? And obviously personal life transitions. You mentioned kids coming in and then going, of course, then they end up going to college and then doing their own things. And then somebody actually came back to you, or actually both of them did. But so I guess tell me how you've kind of managed through all that.
Knowing the market, whatever it was, adjusting to the market. And the key is, because I've always specialized in listings, you listen to the market, and if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks, you lower the price. If it sells and you get multiple offers, it's a different situation. Now, I always tell everyone, March of 2020 is when we had the world change with COVID, and you and I had to stay home for 2.5, 3 months, remember? And we had to get those shots, or we couldn't show houses and all of that. But try to convince somebody to let you in the house because they were scared to death from media, and I didn't believe in any of it. I'm just sorry. I did not like the idea of the government shutting everyone down, and the schools, they were affected. It was horrible.
Oh my gosh.
But I was out there, and Colleen was very wanting me to stay home. Honey, I'm like a caged in animal, so I'd sneak out. So I started back as soon as they said contractors, and I don't know about mortgage lenders, but they said real estate agents and contractors became essential.
Yeah,
were you essential?
We were, because we were in the real estate world, we were so considered essential.
So they said we're essential. I go, "Oh, great." Well, I had all these listings that I was doing, and I had appointments I was going to go to. I don't feel comfortable you coming. I really am scared. And so I'd go in there with a mask, and I'd put on my surgical gloves, and I'd have a little alcohol pump, and I'd wipe off my pen. I mean, I did everything I could to make them feel comfortable. But that's when I got used to saying, "You know what I think would be a great idea? Why don't you move out?" And most of the people need to get rid of but most people don't know how to decorate. So it was an easy way to say, "Why don't you go to an apartment and let me sell it? That way we can get it staged just the way we need." And I can't tell you how many people moved out for me.
Wow.
Or they were moving somewhere else. A lot of people went to the beach.
A ton of people did.
But how to handle the market is knowing the market. And when January of 2008, I knew we were in a deep recession. I was so naive when this all happened with the subprime lenders. I remember like yesterday when it happened. It happened in August. And one of your very good friends, who's a mortgage lender, called me and said, how many closings do you have this month? I said, 35. She's, how many have you closed? And I said, well, we still have about 15. Do you have any closings a day? I said, 2. She said, did they record? Right after that, it dropped down to 2. And I said, I can't believe this. I didn't really understand what subprime lenders did. So I said, how's this going to affect me? It's going to affect you.
Yeah.
So I was naive until about January. January of 2008, I said, we're in a long haul here.
Yeah.
And that was when we started doing short sales, and the banks became my clients' REOs. So the deepness of 2009 was, I don't know about you remembering, but 2009, in my opinion, and 2010 were the 2 worst years because there were so many homes on the market. I mean, so many homes.
It's interesting. In 2007, I worked for a company that filed bankruptcy, right? I want to say it was August of 2007. Yep. I don't know if you probably do remember because we were in your office, Home Bank Mortgage.
Oh, yeah. I would say 50% went bankrupt.
Yeah. And so we were one of the earlier ones. And so, we shut down immediately, and I got a call that morning, said, hey, get everybody together for an all hands meeting in the office. And our CEO had already been let go maybe a couple months before that. And so they, announced to everyone that this was the last day we're filing bankruptcy and the company is shut down, and everybody, it was chaos.
And when all this was happening, it was like, oh, this can't really be happening.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy.
Yeah. And I was the sales manager for that office. And I had to, find a place to take my team, and so we ended up going to Chase for a short period of time. I realized being at a bank is just not ideal in the mortgage business. No offense to the bankers out there, it's just there's a lot of benefits that they get with some products that we don't have, but it is just generally not easy to close loans. And it's nice being at a company where you can count on closing
and
things
and work to make it work.
That's right. And so. That all happened in 2007. 2011, if I'm not mistaken, was my worst year in the mortgage business. I made less money in 2011 than I did in 2002 when I started. It was just absolutely, and
I had 100 listings. 100.
Active?
Yes.
Wow.
And half of them were short sales, and 20% were REOs, meaning the banks contacted me to sell them.
Yeah, those were already foreclosures.
Those were easy.
Yeah.
Because they would say, Bank of America was my favorite. They'd say, we've got 5 houses in this neighborhood. And I'd go and, because to them it was black and white. Short sales, I became a short sale specialist.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing.
It's a lot of negotiation.
I can't even tell you how hard it was.
Right.
But there were many very good friends of mine that were top agents, and they go, well, I'm not doing short sales. And I said, well, you're going to go out of business, which they did.
Yeah.
I said, no, I got to make an income here. I have a team to support, and whatever this is, people have to buy.
And those people needed to sell.
And
they were in a position where they had to sell.
So short sales, I would educate. I prayed with a lot of people. They would start crying, and I go, we're going to pray about this. I'm going through the same thing. Oh, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. I said, I have only overhead and very little income, but we're going to get through this together.
Yeah.
And some of my short sales took a year to close.
Yeah.
So Madeline Price, who was my accountant, I'd sit down with her every week. And I was proud to say I was one of those that didn't have to file bankruptcy, but I learned to cut.
Yeah.
And I was determined we were going to make it. I had many day I was on my knees praying. But one thing that taught me was I was never afraid again.
Yeah.
We go through these markets. I know it's going to be okay. But it was 4.5, 5 years of just challenges. And people that remember it, it's almost how they forget. But it was tough. And those sellers, most of them in the beginning, I knew, I'd go visit them. And they would say, you have to realize I've been laid off, but I have a great severance package. And I'll go. And they said, I just want to know what you think it's worth now. And I tell them, I said, now, if you do decide to sell, I can't tell you what it's going to be worth in 4 months. I'll let you know then. well, I won't have to worry about that. I'm going to get a job. 4 to 6 months later, they'd call me and go, we're having to move somewhere else, and their house would be worth less than what they paid. And I would hear them say, I'm educated. You don't understand. I was the CEO of this. I said, it doesn't matter. You did nothing wrong. And I'd have to explain to them, we were just in, and they used to say recession. I said, no, we're in a depression.
Yeah.
And I came so close to those people, and I'd say, and they would say, I'm just going to give the key back to the bank. I said, no, 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 no. That'll be on your credit for 7 years. You do a short sale, it'll be on your credit for 2 to 3 years. If you're a veteran, you can get literally in 2 years, you can buy another home if you're a veteran.
That's right.
And so I would educate them. So you asked me something earlier, how do I adapt? Knowing the market.
Yeah.
Knowing what it is. And
how do you, so let's dig into that a little bit deeper. Like, how do you know the market? How do you
you
get
just live it.
Yeah.
And I do all my own listings. A lot of my other dear friends that are top agents, they have listing partners, and they'll say to me, how do you work too hard? I go, you don't understand, it's my passion. I love, I'm listing 4 houses this week. I know what every one of them are. I've got my vendors coming in and get them ready. I do all my own negotiation. I love doing what I do. And I can tell you, like the house I just listed yesterday, we're going to put that on the market on the 22nd. The walk-in closets in every room, the butler's pantry, the vaulted ceiling, the coffered ceiling. I mean, I just know all the rooms. So when I'm talking to someone that's an agent, and that's another thing I do, I call agents for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I do everything the old-fashioned way when it comes to communicating. And it's the funniest thing, Michael. Sometimes I'll call them, they'll say, is this Ida? It's 9 o'clock at night and you're calling me? I said, well, I just appreciate you showing the house today. Wanted to know what your buyers thought. Because half of them don't give feedback anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm a communicator, and I think that that's a gift that God gave me.
No doubt.
And my sweet husband used to say, he'd hear me on the phone with sellers so stressed and angry, and he'd say, you have a gift for communicating. And I that's something it comes natural for me.
Yeah. No doubt about you do. There's certainly, that's actually part of one of the questions I was going to ask you too, is about relationships. What do you do to build long-term relationships with your clients?
Well, we do several things. I do 2 newsletters a month. And I got this from Michael, Letter of the Heart.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you know, Michael and Colleen are in business with me. Mm-hmm. And Michael and I, he has very similar personality as mine. And last year,
very shy, just like you.
Yeah, he is awesome. He and Colleen have different styles, but both very successful. And Michael, like when the phone rings 11:30, 12, I know it's him. And I'm trying to go to bed earlier and get up earlier, and I'll say, "What's up?" Well, I want to talk to you about this and this and this. And then he gets me all geared up on what we should be doing, but because you know he goes to the core, he has all these ideas. Well, I don't want him to do something that I'm not doing. Mm-hmm. So then I copy him, and I'll call Lauren or Katie at the office, and I'll say, Michael's doing this, we got to do that. So having him has made me stay on top of everything.
That's great.
On what is the edge of today. And so many agents that have been doing it as long as I am, they get very set in their ways. I am like, I'll try that. Let's do this. So what do we do? And then Michael's doing something that I'm trying to do with him, if I'm available, is once a month. He has happy hour. Mm-hmm. And you may have 15 people or 30 people show up. We also give out pot pies to our VIP clients. And the VIP clients are people that you keep a relationship more than others, mm-hmm. and you give them little gifts, and they hear from you all the time. But they hear from us.
Yeah, yeah.
And
so I just did a letter from the heart earlier today, and I did a video to go along with that too. Yeah. So I think they really do. People connect with them.
And people, they're not used to people giving you little gifts. Mm-hmm. But they hear from us. I think that's the biggest thing is too many real estate agents, they sell a house. I can't even tell you how many homes that I've got listed where the buyers will call me. And I'll say, why did you call me? We loved your book. Will you do a book like this? I do a very professional booklet, and I have it in the house for the buyers. And they're expensive. but they have every attachment, the survey, the updates, the septic drawing, they have everything. So the buyer can look at it and take it with them. And the argument that I have from a lot of agents is, well, they can look on their phone. There's something about paper because people don't get paper anymore.
Yeah.
But I've done that from the very beginning. And it shows a great representation of having it in the house. And they'll contact me because of that.
Yeah.
And they'll say, we really like the way you marketed your home. So we said, if we ever sell, we're going to call you. And that makes me feel good to know
great.
that.
That's wonderful.
And most of the time, they won't remember their agent.
No, right. The staffs, everybody knows, has heard it over and over again. Most people would certainly choose to work with their agent again if they had a choice, but they'd never hear from their agent.
Yeah.
And then therefore they end up writing to someone else or finding someone else or going to an open house and finding someone. So I think, staying in touch with your clients, doing the things that you and Michael and Colleen and your whole teams are doing, those certainly work. And that's certainly, I'm sure, one of the reasons why you guys are more successful than most.
And Colleen has such great ideas. So I think I'm blessed. And I have to tell you the story about how they came. When they were growing up, they would cry because I have to put them in the car because Dad would be on a trip, with American, and they weren't quite old enough to leave them. So I'd get them. I said, "You have to go." I don't want to go. Well, in those days, you didn't even have a fax machine.
Yeah.
So I'd say, "No, you have to come with me." And then when Colleen got to be about 12. I'd say, okay, just don't let your brother leave the house, because Michael was like always wanting to be gone to go see his friends. And so never did I ever think they would want to get this business, because Colleen got her degree in business and finance, and she had a really good executive
She was in the banking and mortgage for a little bit, right?
She was with BB&T. And I think what really did it, she was the manager of the Six Forks office, right there at the corner.
Right here. Yeah.
It was robbed 3 times in a month. I think that did it.
Yeah.
And right after, within a few months, she tells me she wants to join the team. And honestly, I was in shock. And I went, really? She said, Mom, I'm to my plateau of what I can earn in banking. And I see what you do. And I want the flexibility of being able to achieve what I need to do. I said, okay, but the first year you are going to learn. So the first year I had them learn how to do files, listings, how to close it. They would work with my closing manager, my listing manager, and I gave them a small salary where I said, you're going to work in the office and then you're going to go with me. And then I'd have them go on listings with me because I didn't want them not to know what they're doing. They did great. Well, then Michael was a college coach at Ouachita Baptist. Michael only was going to coach. And the following year, he flew in because we never missed a Panther game. He went to UNC Charlotte because he didn't want to miss Panther games. And he would fly in just for the games. And we were at the Marriott, and he said, Mom, I have something to tell you. Well, he and Leslie are only married a year. And I said, oh, you can have a baby. He goes, no, I'm going to get out of coaching. I'd like to join the team. I sat down in the bed on the Marriott, and I went, Michael, I don't think this is a good idea. And he goes, why? I go, I don't want to support you. And he goes, you're not going to have to support me. I want this to be a team. I want us to work together. And I went, are you sure? And took off.
Yep.
He did the same thing. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm sure he would tell the story as well. I would put him in the car with me to go do listings. And we had a subdivision at that time I thought was out in the boondocks, and it was in Youngsville. And the builder called me and said, I can't get these houses sold. Well, at that time, you passed Roseville, you just kept going. And Michael had on Tommy Bahama slacks, a real pretty shirt. It's 100 degrees. He gets in the car, he's wet. And
just sweating.
I mean, just pure sweat, from being so hot. We get in the car and he goes, Mom, I'm hungry. And I said, well, it's 4:00. Okay, let's just stop in. And we went to the McDonald's in Roseville. And I pulled in and I said, well, we'll get a big hamburger. And I drove up the window. He tells this story, everybody. I thought it was normal. And I said, we want the largest hamburger, but can you slice it in half for us? He goes, Mom, I can eat a whole sandwich. I said, it'll spoil your appetite. He goes, so he always tells people she's the only person that went in and asked to have him slice it. And he goes, Mom, I'm still hungry. I said, well, you'll be hungry. You're going to eat her on 6:30.
Yeah.
To this day, I laugh about that.
That's
but
hilarious.
In my mind, I don't eat a lot. So I just thought, well, it's 4 o'clock or 4:30. We'll just split a sandwich.
That's hilarious.
But he would go with me on these listings and he'd go, where are we going again? Because at the time, it seemed like it was so far out. I mean, I do listings in Lewisburg, Franklinton,
wherever you got to take them.
You just go wherever you got to go.
Yeah.
But it's just changed a lot.
We're going to have to wrap up. I want to ask one last question. I've really enjoyed this. Get to learn a lot of stuff I didn't know about you or Michael or Colleen for that matter. Just thinking a little bit about legacy. You and I've talked about this a little bit before in the past. You certainly have no intention of slowing down.
Not at all.
No intention of doing that. Tell me a little bit about what you want to leave as a legacy at some point in the future.
We changed our name this year, or actually the beginning, it was like last year, to the Terbet Group. Michael and Colleen both said, Mom, we love being a part of the Ida Terbet Group, but we want to have a legacy of being one.
Yep.
So we decided to call it the Terbet Group. And the one thing that I wanted to get across was that I don't plan on retiring. I'm like Trump. I mean, he's older than me, but I plan on working until I don't want to work again.
Sure.
I've only worked my entire life. I started working at 13. People will say to me, I'll be interviewed for magazines and the newspaper, and like, what are your hobbies? I love what I do. I love traveling. I like to go to the beach. I love being with my family. I like being with my grandkids. But if you ever saw me sit down and read a book, you would think something's wrong with Ida, unless it's related to real estate.
Sure.
So what I want is for the Terbet Group just to continue on and be known as the best company out there, and that we love what we do. But I have last year my husband was sick, and so my priorities changed. I only do listings anyway, but I really had to juggle because we went to 4 to 6 doctor appointments a week. We were in and out of the hospital 4 out of 6 months. We didn't know what was wrong with him. He had a lot of other things, and I honestly thought God would keep him here and he'd get well, and he had other plans.
Yeah.
So I had to slow down. And the real estate world, people were saying, oh, Ida's slowing down and Terb's taking over. That just would upset me. But he was my priority. He was the love of my life. I miss him so much. And when he knew we were told on December 2nd, Michael, Colleen was with me because we thought he was going to start on radiation chemo because he had bladder cancer and it was only located in the bladder. So to me, that was great news. But Michael and Colleen saw him declining. But because I adored that man, he was just the love of my life. I really didn't see how he was declining.
Yeah.
And Michael and Colleen would talk between themselves and they would say, we don't want to tell Mom, but I don't think he has much time.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to go on December 2nd, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving. The Friday before, he told both of them, your mom is going to do everything she can to convince me to take chemo and radiation. You guys need to help me because I don't want to do it. And Michael said, Dad, let's just see what the doctors say.
Yeah.
So on December 2nd.
He was 88 at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, he turned 89. He turned 89 December 15th. He was older than me. I didn't care. I kept him young. He really didn't start aging until he was a year before.
Yeah.
People always thought he was 20 years younger. He'd be
sure.
with people, they're going, well, this old guy, 80, they think he's 65. But I wouldn't let him get old. But we were there. And I go, okay, so what are we going to do? And because I like to solve problems, and they said, we're not going to give him chemo. We're not going to give him radiation. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And then Michael spoke up and said, is my dad dying? They said, yes. It was hard, very hard. He was as calm, like I'm sitting here. I look over and I said, honey, did you understand what they said? He goes, yeah. And they said, we're going to start hospice tomorrow. Honestly, we think he should go to the facility on Trinity Road. And I went, absolutely not. He's going to stay with me. And hospice, and I will tell you, I don't know if you have choices of hospice, but transition was wonderful. They walked me through everything. I became a nurse. when you love someone the way I love Bob Terbet, it was an honor.
Yeah.
So he kept telling me, you get back to work with a vengeance, do something social every day. And then he also told me over and over again, when you're ready, you're going to start dating and you're going to fall in love again. And I said, that won't happen. He said, oh, yes, it will. He wants me to continue on.
Wow.
And he said, you're the happiest, strongest person I know. So get back to living. He died with such grace. He was a very devout, quiet Christian. And we had a wonderful celebration of life for him. And it's just hard to believe.
Yeah, it is. December was a crazy month with what was going on with him, and another one of my friends had gone through something very similar. Another friend of mine, the Turb knows, and Bob was very special.
Everyone that, even people that didn't even really know him, would say he was so nice. I said he was my balance in life.
Yeah,
because I'm the reactor.
Well, he's much quieter.
Well, it's funny when you're with him.
Yeah, he probably wasn't
so much.
Quiet. Yeah,
but he would never He would not like to be the front of anything.
Yeah,
he always pushed me. We were a perfect balance.
No, that's
just
great.
A perfect balance.
Ida, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
I'm
be a
honored.
Part of this.
I loved it. Got to do it again.
Yes, we will certainly do it again. There's a lot more of a stories to tell, and I really appreciate you being here for this.
And you are fantastic, and I admire you, and you and Michael are such good friends, and you're an example of being a true professional, but also being so tender-hearted and a good person.
Thank you, Ida. Appreciate you saying that. For those of you that have watched our podcast today, thank you so much for investing the time that you have done. Please be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast. And thank you so much. We certainly look forward to seeing you soon again on Beyond the Closing Table.